Hello, and welcome to the Vicar's Watch Dibley,
the podcast where three priests link our stories with those of the Reverend Geraldine Granger and other TV vicars. I'm Kate.
I'm Jenny.
And I'm Ruthie. This episode we're talking about the first episode of The Vicar of Dibley, which is called The Arrival. We're going to go through the episode and share a bit of what it's like starting ministry as a young woman.
Hello!
It's so exciting. It is our very first full episode, and guess what we're doing today?
Probably something to do with the Vicar of Dibley.
Yeah, something to do with the Vicar of Dibley. Today, we are watching the first episode of the Vicar of Dibley, and we're going to be talking about what Geraldine has been getting up to.
Yay!
The classic episode where we meet her for the first time and everything happens.
And all our dreams come true.
But before we do that, how are you both doing?
I'm full of a cold, which is a great start for a podcast recording, that I'm all bunged up and delicious. So you can say thanks to the toddler for passing this on from nursery or wherever he's gone and got it. So, hey.
Oh, I was going to grumble too and say I've been up all night with my dog who had a bit of a rumbly-tumbly, not in a good way, throughout the night. So I feel like, yeah, we both started on day one and we're like, bah.
What would be a rumbly-tumbly in a good way?
If you're a little bit hungry, I think a rumbly-tumbly is all right because it just lets you know. Or if you're digesting, that's the best, isn't it? Because you're like, oh, yeah. It's a lovely meal. Your tummy's like, thank you, nom nom nom. Or the rumbly-tumbly is in like, oh, not sure what's going to come out of there.
If you're Winnie the Pooh and you say, oh, I've got a rumbly in my tumbly, I'm going to go and find some food.
Exactly. That's basically like, an intro theme to a great meal, isn't it?
Anyway, how are you, Kate?
I'm doing good, you know. Yeah, I was really tired last week, but now I'm feeling back on top of things. And I had a really fun moment today where I was woken up by a Facebook chat for morning prayer calling. And I did morning prayer half asleep. And the people I say morning prayer with were laughing at me.
Oh.
Well, that's
sleepy
not
morning
kind,
prayer.
is it?
Well, it was lovely, though. It's lovely to spend time with people, and talking about spending time with people, it's lovely to spend time with you as we talk about the Vicar of Dibley. Should we just jump into it?
Yeah, let's do this.
So, Ruthie, you have a script, don't you? So you're going to guide us through.
I do. I've got this book, which I bought ages ago in a charity shop. It turns out it actually has the script of each of the episodes. So hopefully when we go, did they really say that? We'll actually know what they really said as part of it. So we're going to go through this first episode, which is called The Arrival, which is where we meet Geraldine for the first time. But it starts in a church with a service that I've been to plenty of these kind of totally dire services where you just want to escape.
So I have something to say. I'm going to fly my flag as a complete nerd, and I'm a nerd about church, or I wouldn't be a vicar. Firstly, the verse which David Horton reads, we join just as he's finishing the lesson, don't we? So I wrote this down, and I tried to find out where it was, because I thought that would be a really, it would make me look really smart if I could say, oh yes, this is from Kings, blah, 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 blah. So I wrote it down, and the verse is, the wrath of the king was mighty and knew no bounds, so they did leave that country, and did with heavy heart return unto Japheth and unto Gad. Where do you think that's from, Ruthie and Jenny?
Well, it sounds like something from Kings, doesn't it? Or Chronicles, or...
Yeah, like Japheth, he's David adjacent, isn't he? Is he?
Yes.
Yeah.
Don't out us like this so quickly, Kate.
Well, you know what?
Because it all sounds very biblical.
It
like
does.
you say, that particular verse, that sounds... if
So
you
where's
said to
it
me...
from?
It's not from the Bible!
What?
Craziness.
This is some sort of David Horton made up piece of Bible nonsense. Because
No.
I even searched online, I looked for the King James version online, does not
To be
exist.
honest, I didn't believe you, so I've just searched myself, and I I've also found this is just a quote from David Horton. It's not even a Bible verse, but he reads it on the episode. He reads it from the Bible. Like it's definitely. I'm now going to read from the Bible, and yeah, it's not even a real verse.
So for our listeners, let the reader understand. Even vicars don't know the Bible off by heart. We'll have to go searching, and and we can't always tell the difference between something that's in the Bible or something that's not. Although we do our best.
An amazing quiz online that I've done before, which is this a verse from a Bible or a lyric from a heavy metal song? And it is quite difficult to distinguish between the two sometimes.
I actually don't think I could bear to do those because I think the results would horrify me, and I'd just be like, I don't deserve to go to church on Sunday. Just don't. My friends at uni used to make me do it. My friend is a hilarious, like really keen Christian, and she had a Bible quiz game, and it was like he actually moved around a board. He had characters.
Wow.
And my friends would
Is that
absolutely
Bibleopoly?
love-
I think I have Bibleopoly.
Oh, you did!
Okay. Well, I feel like we need another episode where we play Bibleopoly.
Oh,
But like they used to think it was so hilarious to just like ask me the questions, or even like shout out a book from the Bible and be like, Jenny, is it New Testament or Old Testament? And I'd be like, new. They'd be like, no, it's the old. Ah! So yeah, tricky. But so this I feel like this service then, it's boring, isn't it? It looks cold, it looks dull. There's like 4 people in the congregation. The vicar is he's described as being 102, and there's something that's pretty bad that happens to him.
I mean, it's so boring he dies.
Yeah.
He literally passes away right there and then in the middle of the service.
And they just carry on.
Yeah.
So do you think he normally, like, it's common for him to just fall asleep, so everyone thinks he's just fallen asleep during the service?
Probably. If you're 102, that must be a thing you'd do regularly.
It can't be 102.
According to the internet, he is. He's meant to be 102.
Well, okay, here's my nerd coming out.
Yeah.
You can't still officiate as a priest, as the vicar. Well, you could officiate as a priest. Here comes nerd knowledge. But he would have had to retire as a vicar way before then. So the Archbishop Sentamu, who used to be my previous boss, had to get special permission from the Queen in order to officiate for an extra year.
He is too old to be having sole responsibility for a parish. I mean, especially if he's falling asleep. He should be allowed to retire, take a break, have a rest, take all the naps he needs.
So one quirky thing about this scene, though, that I would like to add in is I feel like everyone watching would be like, oh, surely that would never happen. Like the vicar would never like die in their church service. Surely not. But do you know, I was chatting to one of my parishioners the other day who told me that one of the past incumbents, so one of the past vicars of my church, did actually pass away during their church service. Yeah. So this, I mean, it's it's comedic fact on the Vicar of Dibley, but yeah, that actually happened in my parish as well.
Blimey,
I know. But I was kind of thinking, I mean, obviously not everyone's dream, but like my dream would be, pass away peacefully, surrounded by family. But a good second one would be in church. Do you know what I mean? That's a terrible way to go. Worshipping the Lord in the beauty of holiness, and then off you trot straight into glory.
I get that.
Yeah. I get that, but
Kate's not sure.
I mean, I'm a vicar, but I've got to say, I think I might prefer my bed to like church. And if I had a choice between like dying in bed and dying in church, I think I'd probably prefer to die in bed. This has gotten very morbid.
Yeah, no, I think, like I say, surrounded by family and friends is key, but like the top choice. But I mean, we can't choose these things, can we? But still, a girl can dream.
I'm guessing many of us haven't had that experience of someone die during a service, but have you had people fall ill or anything like that?
I've had a couple of fainters in my time.
Yeah. And what do? Do you just carry on like Alex?
You have to. You just have to. If you're leading the service, you need to carry on and let the other people in the church building do their job and take care of that person. Yeah. Oh, I once went to this service where somebody fell ill, and it was a really big church, really charismatic evangelical church. Somebody fell ill at the very front of church, and I don't even know what happened, but the leader of the service freaked out and was going, guys, there's something going on down here, just don't look at it, just I want you to look straight at me, just keep on looking at me. And it was awful because everyone was like not wanting to look, but you kind of think, well, I've always got to look, because what on earth is going on that I'm not allowed to look at? And he was like, just keep on looking at me, guys. I'm just going to keep on going. And I was like, oh my gosh. And I felt like on that day I learned you just have to let other people take care of somebody who's poorly, and you just have to, keep going. Oh, yeah.
Because
made it worse.
By panicking and drawing attention, you make it worse, because you're denying that person their privacy, and you're making a big spectacle of it.
So with that dramatic start to the episode, we then meet the Dibley Parish Council. And such a bunch of legends. I don't understand what they are.
So this is one of my big questions, and I tell you, whenever I watch The Vicar of Dibley, this is like a mystery that I'm constantly thinking about. I just can't stop thinking about, who are the parish council? Are they also... So for those of you who don't know the Church of England, the way that we're structured is we have these things called parochial church councils, and these are the councils that make decisions about what happens in church. But then in village life, you also have a parish council who make the decisions about what happens in the village. From what I can tell, they are the same body in Dibley.
Yeah. That's what confused me, because they do the parish, they do the planning applications for various things, and I think there's no way you do that in a PCC meeting. No. But then it's all church members, so unless it's all the church members who are part of that, but then.
Except it isn't all church members. In the first episode, the people who we see in the church are the Horsens and Mrs. Cropley, and we're told occasionally Owen comes.
Is Jim in church?
No, I don't think Jim was in church.
All right.
I could be wrong. Because we're told it's a congregation of 4.
Oh. So is that something that the vicar would automatically be on then, the parish council?
I've been invited to sit in on the parish council, but I'm not automatically a parish councillor.
Because you two are in quite rural settings where that kind of thing would happen more, I guess, me assuming.
Yeah, our parish council runs very separately to our PCC. And they're like a body of like councillors. They have their own clerk, and like they do all the formal technical stuff pertaining to the village and like the parish. But then the PCC is literally just church only stuff, like when's our leek pie supper and where's our charitable giving going this year. So yeah, they run very separately. I wonder if that's a slightly more outdated way of leadership for very small villages, like small rural villages. But I don't know.
So I think my villages are perhaps a bit smaller than where you are, Jenny.
Yeah.
I'm not going to. Let's step away from the term outdated. My villages are smaller. From what I understand, is anyone can apply to be one of the parish councillors, and in a smaller community, and particularly as I understand it, as small as Dibley, you could see that all the key players in the community, and one of those would be the vicar, would be expected to participate in the parish council. Though it could well be that the vicar is not a parish councillor, if that makes sense.
Do you know who we need? We need Jackie Weaver.
We need Jackie Weaver.
To sort us out.
We have authority here.
Yeah.
Okay, well, it remains a mystery to us.
It remains a mystery. This will be an ongoing quest. What is the parish council? But shall we just recap who the parish council are? Because there'll be some people who haven't watched The Vicar of Dibley in a while, and maybe when we're talking about all these people may not quite understand who we're talking about. So, on the parish council, we have David Horton, who is the lord of the manor, essentially, right?
Yeah, and chair
of a parish council. Then we have his son, Hugo Horton.
Yeah.
We have Frank Pickle, who is the secretary.
Takes the minutes. We
have Jim Trott.
Oh, Jim.
No. Yes.
We have Letitia Cropley.
Oh, Letitia, yeah.
Of the knitting and the extreme baking. And she also plays the organ in the church and does the flowers.
And I thought I'd put in a pineapple.
And then the last one we have Owen Hewitt, who is one of the local farmers.
Yes.
So
was the vicar on that council previously?
Must have been.
Probably.
Who's your favourite person on the parish council?
I think it's Mrs. Cropley. I have a theory that she's a wild horse, a dark horse. She knows exactly what she's doing, and she is playing it for all her worth.
I can't wait till we get to the episode a little bit later on when we hear about some of her antics when she was younger, riding on a horse through the centre of the village. Like, if you really know your Vicar of Dibley, you'll know what we're alluding to there. I think for me, I'm a real gym fan. Like, I feel like I know so many gyms as well. Like, I've come across many a gym in my life.
Yes.
But yeah, big soft spot for them all. But yeah, I love a gym.
Yeah, and I think there's plenty of Letitia Cropleys as well in church life who do all the jobs, like do the flowers, play the organ, and cater for things. I feel I have to choose someone different then.
We haven't mentioned Alice yet, have we? Just thinking, because she's not on the council.
No,
she's obviously she's a bit of a beanock, isn't she? Big name on campus, that Alice.
Yeah. Do you know what? I really admire David in lots of different ways.
What?
I know.
So badly in this episode.
Oh, he's appalling. But I think the thing I admire is his efficiency in meetings, because I know that we have all been through meetings, which could have been an email or could have just been a quick conversation that have ended up being 2 hours long and nothing has been discussed. And I do admire his efficiency. But my favourite's probably Hugo. He's great. He's got a good heart and he's just a bit daft.
Yeah, he is sweet.
I think David does actually, he grows on you throughout the series. I think by the end of like the final episode, you definitely see how he and Geraldine have actually become friends and he's grown to respect her, and you kind of, and actually I think that's very true of ministry. It's really easy when you go into a place to feel like you've got an enemy and they become the antagonist of your role, but actually they're just another person just like you. And one of the joys of ministry is being able to get past your differences and actually grow to love and respect someone who, it's been a difficult journey, but it's lovely to reach there.
Yes,
and so true.
I think David is a really good example of people who initially were very against the ordination of women and then further kind of understand what that means and lots of things. I want to touch on that later on. We're doing lots of teasers for later on in the episode.
We are. And since we're talking about the characters, I want to sing the praises, just a little tiny praise for Frank Pickle's passive-aggressive minuting. I love a little bit of passive-aggressive use of minuting to undermine someone who is misusing their authority. It's beautiful to watch, it really is.
Yes, but can we all agree that Owen is just creepy?
Oh, so creepy!
I think he's hilarious, but yeah, I know a bit what you mean, but he's top level dance in my opinion.
Oh yeah, but you got to have your boundaries up to interact with him.
Yes.
True. Yeah, although he is the one really that saves the day towards the end of this episode. I mean, that's what race ahead, but you know, he's got his heroic moment to come.
One of my big questions was, who are the parish council? Because they seem to be doing a business of the parochial church council as well. My question is the whole appointment process of this new vicar, right? So they seem to be alluding to it. They talk about someone who is coming very well regarded by the Bishop of Wickham, who I don't think there is a Bishop of Wickham. They seem to have some sort of involvement, but as we know as vicars, to become a vicar of somewhere, you get interviewed, and on that interview panel there are representatives from the parish. So someone must be in the know on this council. Who do you think it is?
Well, I was thinking about that as well, because I wondered, because the appointment is so quick for this person, unless this meeting's happening like months after the previous vicar has died, it seems to be like a week before they get a new vicar. So I wondered about that with all the appointing and stuff, and I wondered if Geraldine initially comes as an interim minister, that she is initially just kind of busting straight away because there's been this tragedy in the congregation, and that was the only way it vaguely made sense to me, that suddenly they have a very quick appointment.
So what's an interim minister, Ruthie?
An interim minister is someone who's just there in the middle of something, between two vicars. You would have an interim minister if it was a place that required particular support or something like that, or it was going through big changes, and that could be a much quicker appointment than having a vicar appointed.
It's interesting. I'm going to take a different approach on this. I think it was just Richard Curtis or whomever taking the liberty of this being a fictional programme. And not going through. Of course. Yeah, so
we are nitpicking. This is where our nerd stuff comes out.
Yeah. Because we all know that the interview process is held by so many people. So many people would have known who, if it was real life, Geraldine was, that she was a woman. They would have interviewed her. They would have asked her for a mock sermon. She'd have had a look around the parish. All of these things. But I think it's just one of those fictional liberties that she turns up. She's this great surprise. So yeah, I think it's, like I say, fictional liberty is taken with this process, even though I know that will troll the nerds amongst us who know this process of appointment so well.
Yes, I mean, we talked about this before we were recording, is I started a lot of this during when we were training together, to the point where Jenny now has my voice in her head when she watches programmes like this, and she just hears me saying, well, that wouldn't happen in real life.
100%.
I guess it's like any show, isn't it? Yeah. If you're a police officer and you watch Midsummer Murders, you must be going, well, that is terrible process, and that's not how you do it. So we are nitpicking, but all of that it still. Yeah.
All of that aside, I think Mrs. Cropley is in the know. I think she is. She is conspicuously not as surprised as the others.
Oh, you think she's the parish rep?
I think she's a parish rep.
I like that.
Because she's also the one later on who says things have to change.
Oh, that is true. There's the good change and bad change.
Yeah.
Is it time for us to think about when Geraldine is met for the first time?
Yes, it is.
That's a good idea, because we then have the scene where David and Hugo talking about all these the vicar coming in, and David wants the vicar to come in and make all these changes and get rid of Alice and all this kind of thing, and then we get to later on in the same house where the new vicar is coming, and everyone is waiting for what they expect will be his arrival.
I have to say, I think this is such a powerful scene, isn't it? All the tension gathers, they're handing out their sweet Montiado or whatever it is. And I feel like David's, again, and this for me is where over and over again he's reinforced of being a bit cheap, kind of bluffing to the other members, and you sort of think, oh, who's this David Horton? Not sure. Yeah. Anyway, and then I honestly feel like the atmosphere of the whole programme, the whole series, which is no surprise because it's all about her, changes completely when she first comes on the scene in a massive yellow coat, despite being drenched in the rain. It's just such a beautiful scene. And like, I think I just wanted to mention as well, like, the most hilarious thing for me is when she takes off her coat, she turns around for the first time, and David Horton literally goes, "Oh my God!" He covers his mouth, and he's like, "Oh, no. And it's just, he like, honestly, he's like so revulsed that there could possibly be a woman in a dog collar, and like, it's just so good. It's so terrible, but it's so good.
Have you had those experiences?
Oh, I mean, maybe not quite revolting, but I have had. I think most female clergy will be able to say that they've had people who have not been able to accept their ministry. Yeah,
I've had surprise, but never like shock horror.
Yeah. Not shock
People
horror.
have thought I've been like dressing. People have said to me like on the bus once, they're like, "Oh, are you in fancy dress?" And I was like, "No, I really am a vicar." And they're like, "Oh, right."
I've had really positive kind of the opposite, where it's been, "Oh my goodness, you're a vicar! You look so cool. You're too cool to be a vicar." That was, I hold that one close to my heart.
I love that.
I never get called cool.
Yeah, I was gonna say, no one's ever said I'm too cool, but yeah, that's my new goal.
Yeah.
I think I've had a right mix of sometimes it's been really positive finding out that I often use the term vicar, even though I'm not technically a vicar, because it's what people understand a lot more of the time. Where sometimes it's been really positive of, "Oh, there's no way you look like a vicar, that's really cool." And other times it's been, "Well, you don't have all the authority and you shouldn't be doing that role because you're not male," and people refusing to go to services that I do and things like that, or because I'm a woman. But I think this is something that we could talk about on a different kind of episode that we could go through.
Talk about for days probably as well. Yeah.
I think it's worth noting though, this hasn't completely gone away. So this first episode was in 1994 when it was just kind of coming on scene that women might be priests and become vicars. And it's not completely gone away still. It has lessened to a degree, the kind of shock of that. But there are definitely I've been asked to not do things because I'm a woman. So I've had funerals where people didn't want me because I was a lady. So it's still something that does still happen, but I think the reasons for it are changing.
Yeah, definitely. And that's something I think that'll keep coming up throughout this podcast because it's just a reality of our lives, like it's a reality of Geraldine's lives. But what I admire so much about Geraldine is how she deals with this. So she's coming in, she knows that she's going to be going against opposition. Like, a bishop never sends someone to a place, if it really is that sort of direct appointment, without picking someone who they know is going to be able to handle it. She has been sent there to change minds and make the change happen. And her coping strategy for this is just so impressive. She has the charm offensive. The whole making her point of charming Hugo and complimenting him and building up his courage. And how she talks to everyone. She makes a point of at least trying to remember their names, but I do exactly the same thing. Really shine a light on how I'm not going to remember your name, but I'm going to do my best. Yeah. And she makes loads of jokes. And her opening joke, which really, I think, typifies who she is. "Oh dear, you were expecting a man with a beard, a Bible, bad breath, and what you got was a babe with a bob cut and a magnificent bosom."
It's
so good.
What a line.
And
I mean, it works in TV, but if you said that in real life, you'd probably get a message from your bishop saying, "Perhaps don't introduce yourself as a babe with a bob cut and a magnificent bosom."
But it's her confidence that gets her through it. Like, I was thinking I couldn't be as confident as she is. Like, this is clearly one of her skills and her gifts, that she just doesn't let it get to her.
Yeah. And you see that throughout this scene and throughout the episodes as it goes on, that she just has this brilliant way with people and the way she's interested in everyone. And I think this is something definitely that we've all done, is had to fake interest in things and be polite and eat weird things that we're given and take weird gifts that we're given and all that kind of thing. That definitely does happen in ministry. And she does it with such charm and elegance, and she's great.
She is.
This might be racing ahead, so stop me if I'm galloping on. But I guess there's that side where you see, like you've both so beautifully put, like, she has such authority and she's so sure of who she is and that she's in the right place. She's got that charm, she's got that confidence. She absolutely jumps over the hurdle of the whole drink thing and goes straight in for the whiskey. You know, so we're thinking, oh, maybe she can earn David's respect, maybe. And then later on in the episode, though, we also get a kind of view into what it's like when she is hurt. You know, when she's confronted at the table with the rest of the councillors about this letter they've drafted to say, actually, you know what, we're not happy with who you are. Yeah. We think it's outrageous that the bishop has sent you here as an experiment, and all of us think you're not right for this parish. And her response is, oh, you sure know how to win the girl. Do you know what I mean? We get that glimpse into her, actually. Like, there are times when she's going to be, I think, so it's like the balance of both, isn't it? But yeah, amazingly held.
But a lot of that's what public ministry is, isn't it? You've got to separate your public self and your private self.
Yes.
I think, so I'm an introvert, so as you both know, I prefer my own company and I find big crowds difficult. But I make the effort and I create this persona of myself who's able to go out there and talk to people and work the room. But you just have to separate those parts of yourself or you just can't manage.
It's a really interesting dynamic to work out about how much you kind of show of your true self and how much you keep away. And I think I've become more and more open with people knowing more about me. There's definitely some stuff that I'm still protective about, but I find using that openness opens doors that were definitely slammed and closed. So, for example, I'm quite open about my struggles with mental health and stuff like that. And being honest about depression and anxiety and all that kind of thing has meant that I've had this incredible ministry where people have been more open about that kind of stuff because I've been willing to be open about that.
Yeah,
that's brilliant.
And I found the same thing actually I have chronic health problems. I have hypermobility spectrum disorder, which results in fatigue and chronic pain. And actually, the more open, as much as I talk about separating my public self and my private self, I do bring an openness about just my physical limitations and my pain. And that has opened so many doors as well in being real.
Yes. And that's something wonderful that Geraldine does in her first service, doesn't she? When she talks about that in her sermon, that here I am, completely yours. And
now this is a good topic, isn't it? Juicy one.
Yeah. So we have this meeting at Horton Manor where Geraldine meets all of these new people who are going to be her parishioners, be her crowd. And some of it is really good and some of it is, well, most of it is just a shock to the people there about who is this woman and how can she be a vicar. And so we start this whole conversation with people about how on earth can you have a woman who's a vicar.
Yeah, and actually this is really on the nose because this was coming out when everyone would have been asking that question because the vote was being passed. It was in the public consciousness. People are still asking today, how can you have a woman who's a vicar? So you have the objections that David makes. He talks about Jesus not having had female disciples. Oh my goodness, I was
wrong,
pulling faces at the screen during that whole scene. And then you've got Hugo being this perfect counterfoil, just exposing like inconsistencies and just the surreal nature of some of these arguments. And then you move on quite quickly to this brilliant conversation at the fence between Letitia, Jim and Owen talking about change and how they don't want things to change, but then Letitia talks about how things have to change, and then you get this brilliant quote of there being good change and there being bad change.
Yeah.
I'd like to raise a really important thing here. I blooming love prawn cocktail crisps, which
me too.
A disaster. I'm doing that line. Prawn cocktail crisps. He's like disaster, and I'm like, no, delicious, Jim. They're delicious.
Prawn cocktail crisps are great, and I think these kind of two scenes with David talking to the bishop and these guys all at the fence talking together highlights some of the kind of initial worries about women becoming vicars. It wasn't a theological basis for lots of them. I mean, David hints to that slightly, but it's more that the village will be in disrepute and women can't do that and we don't like change and Jesus has only male disciples, which he doesn't. And quite a lot of it's social as opposed to theological reasoning for why women can't be vicars. So when we're talking about the fact that Jesus did have female disciples, what are we actually meaning by that?
We have the 12 named disciples. Jesus is, I like to think about it being his youth group on tour. Jesus and the lads on tour, spreading the good news of the kingdom. But so you have the named 12 disciples, and that's a really symbolic naming to correlate with the 12 tribes of Israel. But as well as the 12 disciples, it wasn't them just travelling as that small group of 13. You had a whole host of others travelling with them to learn from the rabbi Jesus. And among them, we have women who are named, who we know are there to listen to and learn from Jesus. So we've got people like Mary Magdalene and some other Marys, and we have Mary and Martha, who are Jesus' friends, sisters of Lazarus as well. So although they are not part of the named 12, they are part of that wider entourage of learners around Jesus who are following his way. And Jesus does send them out, and he sends out women he meets, like the woman who meets at the well, to spread the good news of the kingdom. And it's actually a woman who first encounters the risen Christ and spreads the news of the resurrection as well.
Absolutely. I love the theory or the idea that the disciples, after Judas dies, decide they need to be back to be a 12, and they vote in and draw lots as to who this person is. But I love the theory that that person was supposed to be Mary Magdalene, because she was the first one who saw, who believed, and who told the story. And she didn't have a deep theological understanding of what the resurrection meant at that point, but she just runs and tells people, I've seen the Lord. And I just think that's just beautiful. In fact, I've got a stole, which is what vicars wear when they do communion. It's like a big scarf that goes around them, and my stole for Easter has got an image of Mary Magdalene on it and the words, I've seen the Lord.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah, made by my mother-in-law, so shout out Liz. Thank you very much.
And actually, there's lots of evidence for women being active in leadership in the early church.
Yeah,
and financially funding as well the ministry of Jesus as well. And a wealthy woman.
And, I mean, we can't ignore Paul. Paul does say some fairly explicit things about women in leadership, but at the same time, although he does talk about not allowing women to preach, which is in a context of women not necessarily being theologically educated, and we don't know the exact nature of that particular context, he does also commend Junia as an apostle later on. So Paul himself seems to not be fully convinced either way.
Yeah.
Ooh,
and Junia is a female name, which other translations changed to Junius because they thought there's no way that it's to be a woman. Yeah. So they're talking about all these reasons as to why they're not sure that a woman can be a vicar. And then we meet Geraldine and Alice in the vestry talking about the service and what they... what kind of crowd they're pulling here on a Sunday, which is definitely something I ask as well. And I love this as their first kind of scene of their relationship building and the strong bond of friendship that comes between these two people. Although I'm slightly confused as to her role in lots of ways. So Alice is named as a verger, but she also seems to have this bizarre role where she might be the church warden. And I don't quite understand that, but I'm going to go over to Kate to explain those terms of verger and church warden.
A verger verges, which is a really unhelpful thing to say. But from my understanding of verges I've known, the verges I've worked with, it's a very operational role, helping the church to run, helping the clergy to do their jobs, keeping things running.
See, I think the majority of churches that I've been in, vergers have been a term that's been used for people essentially who are welcomers to a service and are maybe doing kind of odd jobs around. But Alice seems to have a more significant role than that.
Yes, so actually there's two aspects to being a verger. So you have that operational side, and then there's a ceremonial side. So when I talked about a verger verging, that's actually they hold their stick and kind of direct the bishop around when the bishop visits. They're kind of... So I've had services where someone is a verger for the service and they're kind of helping direct people more like a steward.
I love that we have sticks for people. I can see why we're so backwards in so many ways, and people are confused about us standing up and the silly things that we wear, and why is that person wandering around with a stick? And we just see it as, well, not always, but we see it as vaguely normal that someone's just shuffling the bishop round with a stick.
I do love it. Like in a cathedral, I remember being like, oh my gosh, ordination, big service of the year, everyone's in their clothes and the sticks are out. What I do love about that though is it's almost impossible to get it wrong. If you're following someone with a stick, you're like, cool, I know I'm definitely where I'm going.
It's like the tour guides with their umbrellas, isn't it? Up in the air. Definitely. That's essentially what
follow
a
the
verger
person
does.
with the stick.
That's the best way to explain it. Yeah, exactly.
And actually, one thing I love about this scene, Geraldine does the classic vicar move of having a recce round the vestry, looking in all the cupboards, trying to find things. This is exactly what I do. You know, you go in, and you're really nosy about everything. And what I love is her glazed smile of horror when she realises that they're using Ribena instead of communion wine.
Yeah, I remember it well.
Yes. Yeah. We have strict rules as to what you are supposed to use for communion wine and what percentage it's supposed to be and everything like that. And it's in like canon law, isn't it? So it's proper law of the land. You must obey this.
I got in trouble about that once, sort of.
Did you use Ribena?
So this was before I was ordained. I helped organise this really big youth conference with bishops attending to look at young people in the church, and I kind of I was supposed to be organising communion, and it was a really large crowd, and I just didn't know you weren't supposed to that you had to use a specific type of wine. So I was like, yeah, we'll use Ribena because it'll go further. And then I got a call from the bishop's chaplain saying, I heard you using Ribena. You can't use Ribena. I'll have to bring some communion wine. I have never forgotten.
Absolutely. Goodness me, Kate. Shocking. And I'd also really love a passed out Jesus for my wall. Art is her forte. That picture is incredible.
It is.
It is lovely, actually. I think, do you know, there's some addictive phrases of Geraldine, and I feel like that.
I know.
You know, she comes out with some real, when Alice is like, I think it's the Reverend Pottle told her that she was an undiscovered genius.
Yes.
And it's so sweet that Geraldine, I don't know, she's always on side, but it's almost like she's always taking the mick just a tiny bit, but in such a loving way. Did he?
And I had a very similar situation once where someone was showing me their drawings where they thought they were an undiscovered genius, and I don't know lots about art, but I suspect they weren't, and so I had to be very polite just looking through their sketchbook. I should have remembered that line.
That is vicar life, I have to say, isn't it, sometimes?
And then Geraldine acting out Pilate interviewing Jesus in that kind of mastermind fashion.
Yes.
So
Catering, genius, of course, that's what Jesus' specialist subject would be.
And you can see her disappointment that Alice doesn't quite get all the levels of comedy there. Jesus not knowing how many loaves and fishes it takes to feed 5,000, which... Yeah. Of course he doesn't know, because it only takes him a few.
Yeah.
And as well, I love that bit where she shows her vulnerability and she just goes, we're going to be all right, Alice. And that bond, that support of women supporting women, it's great and I love it.
But also how important your verger or your warden is in ministry.
Yes.
I would not be able to do my job without the support of my fantastic family of wardens, seriously.
Oh,
yeah.
There
are people in church who are absolute gold dust, aren't they? And
yeah.
finding them is so important, and knowing those people who, yes, will challenge you, but have got your back, and who will love and support you and check that you're doing all right. Those people are wonderful, and every vicar needs at least one, preferably 20.
Definitely.
So after that scene where they're in the vestry, we go to the parish hall where we have the extraordinary meeting of the parish council, and everyone's there apart from Geraldine, and they talk about how, well, David talks about how he has created and drafted this letter from the whole parish council saying they refuse to be an experiment ground for women clergy, and that they're going to send this letter to the bishop and say, we want rid of her.
I have to admit, I watched this the evening after I got ordained. I think I felt like it was a mistake because I cried so much. Like, it was just such a painful moment of, but
yeah. Do you remember that first time when you suddenly realised that not everyone was going to support you and be on your side for getting ordained? Because I can remember that moment really, really clearly.
Yeah.
I was at a conference where it was called Call Waiting or something like that, and it was all about young people exploring vocations and how they might look to being ordained, or whether it would be a different role that they go for. And I remember sitting in the kind of like bar area, I don't think it was quite a bar, like a sitting room, and just chatting to some people, and there were two blokes there, and it was me and another lady, and they were explaining why they didn't think we should be ordained because we were women, on a conference about people exploring ordination.
Ouch.
And it just suddenly, because everyone else had been so supportive mostly so far, and then just to suddenly be hit by the fact that there will still be people for a very long time in your ministry who will think you are subpar, or you do not have any authority, or have cheated your way into the system and are ruining the Church of England for other people because of your gender.
Yeah, and I definitely had that. The summer before I went to university, I'd already done sort of call waiting again. And I was a youth worker at the time, and I was helping out with some youth groups from different churches that I hadn't been involved with before. And there was a really clear conversation where someone said, why are you doing that? You're not meant to do that. You're a woman.
Yeah.
But I think what hit harder was later on, after I'd been ordained, and the first time someone refused to receive ministry from me. That was really hard.
Yeah. How about you, Jenny?
Yeah, I'm trying to think, actually. Nothing comes to mind as like the first time when I realised that not everyone would be on board. And I'm not sure if it's just because like my mind's wiped those experiences out. And I think, there are people in my diocese, in my deanery, who still don't feel that they can support women in ministry. And I think I have been on a real journey, like in my university days, pre-ordination, starting to explore a calling. I was really quite like angry and almost like not aggressive, but almost like ardently angry and over righteous perhaps about women being in ministry and being included, and women and men revealing who God is together across all the differences that we have as humanity. But I feel like as I've kind of continued in ministry and stuff, those things, I don't know why, but they like not bother me less. Like I still get really riled up, but I think I feel like, I don't know, it does upset me a little bit, but I'm more like I have the capacity to hold all of that, because I kind of feel like I don't know, I'm not confronted with it day to day. I'm surrounded by people who are so supportive, and so when it does happen, I'm like, oh yeah, there are still some people that are like that, but like holding them, it sounds a bit cheesy, but like holding them with love and like compassion, and being like, well, actually there's room for all of us. But I think if that had happened to me early on in my calling, it would have maybe even shut doors for me.
Yeah, it's definitely a resilience that I think grows. I think the longer you are in ministry, and the more confidence you grow, the more people you surround yourself with who support you and encourage you, the less hard it is when you encounter the people who aren't going to like you. I think it's one of the biggest lessons I felt I learned in curacy was that you just can't please everyone, and there will be people who don't like you. There will be people who will be upset with you, and you just have to keep on doing the good work.
And I think sometimes it's not just about them not liking you, because they might like you as a person, but just don't see I can't think of the right word.
They don't think your ministry is valid.
Yeah, that, you know, oh, you're a very nice person, but you can't do what you're doing. I find that really difficult.
Yeah. I think that is the challenge, isn't it? To change people's minds, as Kate said, to keep on doing the good work. Like, I'm thinking about David Horton has that sign, nothing sicker than a woman vicar. As in, like, this is terrible, this is terrible. And nowadays, I'm like, nothing sicker than a woman vicar.
Yeah.
Like, isn't she awesome? And
says Jenny as she skateboards and does a kickflip. Oh, I'm a sick vicar.
Like, yeah, with my finger. But as in, like, that is almost like the calling is harder in a way, because you have to prove to people, actually, not prove to people, but just by being who you are, there's so much that you're telling people about who God calls and why God calls them just by being you. And I think authenticity, you know, that's so important. And yeah, it's almost up to us to kind of change those ideals and allow people to just in their own time ponder with God. Hopefully potential change in theologies that are perhaps a bit more difficult for people.
So let's go back to this scene. What I love is actually, I mean, Jenny, you talked about how vulnerable Geraldine does get in this scene, but even then she does hold it quite gently.
Definitely.
And she with grace.
Yeah.
I absolutely love Geraldine in this scene. Things from that comment that goes almost under the radar about how the church finally owning up to how most of the priests are gay.
Yeah.
And that's just not addressed at all.
Yeah.
And I'm sure we need to have a conversation at some point about LGBT inclusion. But, you know, I loved that. And I wish it had more attention, but it just slips under the radar.
Yeah.
And her amazing jumper. Which somehow she's found a jumper that doesn't hide the clerical collar.
Do you know, I've always said to anybody who can possibly knit or sew, the one thing I would love is the jumper from that first episode. And I know Geraldine's like, thank you, my grandma knitted it. She's blind. I love the way she says it. It's so funny. But I've always wanted one of those jumpers.
So they read all the letter, they go through it all, and then Owen comes and saves the day, creepy Owen, by suggesting perhaps they didn't vote on this and they need to vote on it, and everyone's suddenly thrilled that they get the second chance to have Geraldine.
Definitely.
Yeah. It's a classic example of power dynamics.
Yes.
In this sort of meeting, isn't it? Where you have the loudest person sort of dominates everything and therefore assumes that they are the majority.
Yes.
And then you have a sudden turnaround where as soon as that loudest person has been undermined, everyone comes out as not having been in support.
Yeah, and you definitely get people like David like this in churches and other organisations where they are the loudest voice, and actually what they think represents everyone doesn't necessarily represent everyone. And there's that big challenge, isn't there, for people when they find out that they're not in the majority. So we go to the Sunday service, and we start in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen.
And we hear a crowd of people in the church instead of the usual 4.
Yes.
And we're all shocked with the number of people there. And this line that Geraldine says about, I would like to start by singing Zippity-Doo-Dah. I can just imagine Jenny saying that at the beginning of the service. That's such a Jenny line.
It's funny you should say that. I feel like in my curacy posts, like when I was a curate, so when I was very first practicing what it was like to be an ordained minister, I based my introduction on this kind of opening and sermon, because after she wants to sing, that is the truth, after she wants to sing Zippity Doodah, she talks about being there for her parishioners whenever they need her. Her door's always open 24/7. And I remember watching that and being like, yes, I aspire to that. That is the person who I'm supposed to be. That's what I want it to be like. And then coming into ministry and being like, aha, this will have to look very slightly different. It needs to be sort of 20 hours rather than 24.
Yes.
But as in that captivated my heart. And I was like, yes, that's who I am. That's what I want. That's exactly what I want to be like. So yeah, both with the Zippity Doodah and her kind of like, here I am available for you. I was like, that is the heart of ministry. But obviously, I know we need to unpack what that means for boundaries, because that's a big conversation.
Yeah.
But
that's the thing, isn't it? Actually, I think that's what we all aspire to be. Is we want to be those people who are giving and caring and love the people that we're working with. But actually, in order to do that, boundaries are really important, and days off are really important, and turning your work phone off and stopping answering emails is really important for us in order to flourish, to be what we be. And Geraldine says in her sermon what she thought she was going to be before she decided, or she read the Sermon on the Mount and decided she wanted to be a vicar. So my question to you two is, what did you expect or want to be? Apart from obviously supermodels, as Geraldine did, what were you hoping to be before you became vicars?
So I, like you, Ruthie, I felt the call when I was really young, about 16, 17. Before that, I wanted to go into publishing. The idea of being paid to read books all day. Publishing is a lot more than that, but I was a young teenager when I got this idea, so it seemed like a dream job.
Sounds the dream, yeah. What about you, Jenny?
When I was growing up, I think midwifery captured my heart. Like I did like child development at school and one born every minute, and I was like, oh yeah. So yeah, I think midwifery nowadays, I think if that could be another job, it would have been midwifery. I just
you would be a stunning midwife. I think there's a lot of similarities between being a midwife and being a priest.
Well,
but that's a whole other
midwives
podcast.
Midwives of the spirit.
And what about you, Ruthie? What did you want to be?
I always thought I'd be a teacher. I thought I'd either do primary school or teach English and drama, which is what my mum did for 25 years. She was a teacher, and so I always thought I'd follow mum's profession, but in the end I've followed dad's instead, who's a vicar. So I just keep it in the family.
And we've talked about our childhood, teenage aspirations for jobs, but actually I think we've had this conversation before where actually if we look back, there were inklings in our childhood of like the games we'd play.
Yes.
Because I most definitely took a BCP home from church one week and played communion with my teddies. I definitely did that. What about you?
Yeah.
Whereas I semi-drowned my brother in the bath trying to baptise him.
I held funerals for all my guinea pigs that died, and just like never thought anything. I was just like, that's what you do. That's just what has to happen. My mum would dread it. She'd be like, "Oh, Jenny, please don't," because I'd bring out the other guinea pig that was still alive, and she'd be like, "No, it's too sad." But yeah, it's just part of the way of life. It has to be done.
Oh, that's beautiful.
And actually, when you start tracking these threads, I talked about how I didn't want to be a vicar, but really, if you look back, I was always on that path. All the things I enjoy doing, I love doing. God was working through that. And I've reached a point where I'm doing something I love, and I couldn't see myself doing anything else except the odd fantasy I have of working in a bookshop.
So we get this picture that Geraldine pictures of just suddenly being captured by what it would mean to be a priest. And it's a great job. Yeah. It's super stressful and exhausting at times, but it is one of the most brilliant jobs ever.
Can I introduce one final nitpicking, geeky moment?
Oh, here comes the nerd!
The hymns on the hymn board, the numbers, don't match with the hymn numbers that she announces.
So the service finishes and the parish council gang all gather in the vestry, which is the bit of the church where vicars get ready and all this kind of thing. It's called the vestry, and they're all there saying, top marks, you're going to be brilliant.
Yeah, well, they come in after the service, aren't they? Everyone's delighted, going, oh, well done, vicar, well done, vicar. And it's almost like the viewers are cheering along with Geraldine. We thought it was the end of the road for her, didn't we? And then we're joining in, like you say, with all of the members of the parish council congratulating her. And I wonder to like what extent is this every vicar's dream? It's like everyone hears, oh, there's a new vicar coming, there's a new vicar coming. And then your church is just like packed on the first Sunday. That's got to be a fantasy for all vicars, isn't it, really? But
it's glorious.
But so at the end of this episode, I feel like we've really established the themes of what the whole series is going to be about. You have these tensions between Geraldine and David, the tension between the traditional and change. Yeah. And you have Geraldine being a person of fun, who's confident, who's going to tackle the problems with joy and aplomb. And we've also established all those themes which are still constant in our ministries, our tensions of what it's like to be a young woman in ministry, how we encounter resistance, but also the joys that we have as well.
Yeah. And it's all about love, isn't it, in the end? You know, you love people and you love God. That's your job. And that's fantastic. It's blooming difficult at times, but it's great. We hope you've enjoyed this episode of The Vicar's Watch Diddley. Thank you to Toby for editing our ramblings.
Any views expressed in this podcast are our own and don't necessarily represent those of the Church of England or any other organisations with which we are affiliated.
And as always, bless you for listening.
Why was Yorkshire tea banned in communist Russia?
I do not know.
I don't know.
Because property is theft.
I don't think we're clever enough to get that joke.
I knew this feels like more like a GCSE history question to me. I'm so sorry, Caitlin.
Theft.
You're surrounded by
Communist Manifesto. Property is theft.